Have you ever wondered whether the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place?
Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your hosts Brian Berneman and Kayla Greenville, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world.
We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers.
From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure of being joined by Kate Bezar for this episode. And Kate, just like for all of our episodes, I'm going to ask you to please introduce yourself to our audience. And of course, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Pleasure. So my name's Kate Bezar. I am, I'm many things. I wear many hats, but the ones I believe you're most interested in, my current role, I'm one of the co-founders of the Better Packaging Company. We produce sustainable packaging for eCommerce. Prior to that, I started my own business, my own magazine, predominantly in Australia. It's called Dumbo Feather Magazine. It is still going strong. I'm also a mum of 3. I live on Waiheke Island. I'm a very proud Kiwi. I love creating businesses and brands that have an impact on the world. And it's one of my favorite things to talk about.
Beautiful. I'm really interested. I always love hearing, before we get into like actually talking about packaging and all of that side of things, a little bit more about you, the person, and how you got into this. Were you always interested in the environment and packaging?
Look, I think everyone has a journey, and I certainly don't have one sort of aha moment. I do remember I went to Nepal when I was 18, and there was a rubbish strike at the time. And as we sort of landed in Kathmandu and made our way through the streets to where we were staying, and over the course of our stay there, the rubbish was just piling up on the streets, literally, and you'd sort of have to scoot around it. And the stench and the impact of that, coming from a country such as we live in, New Zealand, we don't see rubbish. It gets picked up on a regular basis and it goes somewhere else. And so it was the first time that I sort of had an awareness of the volume of waste that we as human beings create, and that maybe it's actually not just disappearing somewhere in a good way, but it's existing out there in some form or another still. And then, sort of fast forward a number of years, I'd been a management consultant based in Australia, and I walked into a newsagent in Sydney wanting to buy something to read, and I just went round and round circles in this newsagent, and I started thinking about magazines literally in this newsagent, going, this is just such a shitty product and such a shitty business, and it's just rubbish. I don't want to buy any of these. They're just going to make me feed that consumer in me, make me want more things for my house to wear, make me feel like I'm not beautiful enough, and it just seemed so incredibly wrong. And so I literally walked out of that newsagent, and I've got a journal entry from that night that says, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a magazine for people like me. And through that process of then kind of going, well, if I'm going to be putting something into the world, if I'm going to be responsible for making a physical product, it has to be in as low an impact way as possible. And that set me off on a journey of really understanding what my values were and what the values of this product that I was going to make, this magazine, were, and how those values would manifest in every decision I made around the creation of that magazine. And I can go into that in a bit more detail, but essentially I was very, very conscious in my decision making, and the result was a magazine that looked like nothing else that had ever been made before. It read like nothing else that had ever been made before, and it found a really passionate, loyal tribe and community of readers who it really resonated with, and who had been, without necessarily even knowing it, searching for something different. Just like me, really. Yeah. And so that was a really strong lesson in the power of creating through value, being driven by values in that creation process. And that's sort of what I've brought to, everything I've done since, really.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that you shared that, because I do feel the way that business should actually behave, and any new business should be from that place of values and from trying to have an impact in the world, and a positive impact, and not a negative footprint. And really, like, a lot of times and through the years, talking with so many people in business, trying to understand, why does this business exist? Businesses should be there to basically solve a need that we have. And there's a lot of businesses that are not doing that, really.
Well, or they, you might argue that someone who's putting potato chips into miniature bags is solving a need for the busy mother who needs something to put in their kid's lunchbox. But at the same time, what is the responsibility to society and to the community and the environment at large for that company? And so I think companies have a responsibility to not necessarily pander to every need that we might have, if it's not necessarily behaviour or consumerism that's actually going to improve society as a whole.
Yeah, and I do think that, like, we have kind of like, at this time, we have, with climate change and everything that we are aware that is happening, we have that responsibility, both from a consumer standpoint and from businesses standpoint, besides also regulations from government, to do the right thing. And I do think that nowadays, even though, like, I talk a lot about the circular economy, and I think that businesses like yours are trying to bring us into that. And I'm curious, for the ones that don't know enough about the concept of circular economy, would you be able to share what you are doing and what you understand about circular economy?
Yeah, okay. So the opposite to a circular economy is probably a good way to start. And that's this, they talk about a take, make, waste model. And it's a very linear model of consumption in which we take virgin resources from the earth often, or from the environment, turn them into a product that may be used more than once, but often is only used once. And then it just ends up in landfill. And it's a one-way street to a waste stream. The circular economy involves designing something, a product or even a service, considering the entire life cycle, so that the materials are sourced in a responsible manner, it's produced in a responsible manner, and it's created in a way such that it can be reused many, many times. And then when it can no longer be used again, those resources can be recycled into ideally into that same product again, but if not, into something else. So if I go back to the magazine model, and this is like 17 years ago now that I did this, I actually applied circular model thinking before I even heard the term. The terminology is actually quite recent, but I went, right, if I'm going to be making a magazine, it's going to have to be on 100% recycled paper stock. I'm going to use soy-based inks, not petroleum-based. This is unheard of at the time. It actually cost me a lot of money to do it this way. I was like, the content in it isn't going to be, it's not going to go, I don't want it to go out of date, out of fashion in a week or a month. I want the content to be timeless. So, I wanted it to be a treasured thing. So it had really high production values, that the photography was always beautiful, and people collected them and treasured them. Now, built into the usual magazine model is there's almost a 60% assumed wastage. They produce 3 times as many magazines as are actually going to be bought even. They just saturate newsagents, and then what's not sold, they cut the masthead off. That's proof that it wasn't sold, and then they pulp the rest, right?
Yeah.
That kind of model just horrified me. So instead, I paid a lot of money to get any unsold copies back to me, and then I sold them as back issues through my website. Ironically, and I love telling this story, it cost me a lot of money. I did it because I believed it was the right thing to do, but it actually created a really neat secondary revenue stream for me. And I think we found this in this latest business as well. Often you do things for the right reasons, not the economic reason, but it does often end up having an economic imperative as well.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I find it interesting, and this is what I wanted to ask you now, is that for a lot of businesses, doing the right thing, or the right thing of what we know now that it's the right thing, usually comes with an extra cost.
Yes.
Where are we now in terms of that, this is just my view from what I'm seeing. There's a lot of products that are actually enabling us, a lot of compostable products that are enabling us to have packaging that is not more expensive. It's not going to cost businesses, like whatever extra percentage than a petroleum-based packaging. What do you see that now with the fact that those costs are actually starting to become basically on the same level?
I think it's just a super exciting time where if it doesn't cost any more to do the more sustainable, better thing, then there's no excuses anymore, which is really neat. I think on this, I think it's also worth saying that often doing the sustainable thing doesn't cost more. If you think about it in terms of waste, we are very conscious at our production facilities that any offcuts from our packaging gets recycled back into new packaging, and it actually saves us money. You've got 10% post-production waste going back in. That's 10% less virgin material you have to buy, and sometimes it's just about being smarter, and using packaging that actually fits your product better. You're going to save money on the packaging as well as potentially on postage. And that's a saving as well. And it also means you're not wasting extra space and all those kind of things. And it's as simple as, turning off light switches and, trying to utilize natural light, natural ventilation as much as possible. It actually saves you money. So it's not always the case that sustainability is, going to cost you more. It may actually end up saving you money too.
Yeah, but I think that as you're saying that, like I do notice that for a lot of people, they still think that the sustainable thing is more expensive. Absolutely. It's like a premium.
Yeah. Look, our mission at the Better Packaging Company is to make sustainable options affordable and accessible to businesses of all sizes. And we're often approached by companies saying, can I have a discount off your prices if can I have wholesale prices? And the answer to that is we've already made it as cheap as we possibly can, because it's really important for us that price isn't a barrier to people doing things sustainably, and we'd rather make less product and less profit and have the product more widely available.
Yeah, and can you share for everyone that hasn't heard of your product, what is the product made out of, and what is actually, as you mentioned, like what is the need that it's actually solving?
Okay, I thought you'd never ask. Look, Beck, my co-founder, and I were working sort of indirectly in e-commerce, and we saw the rise of e-commerce orders. Literally, this online selling is going nuts, and it has been for a while, and that's actually only been exacerbated by COVID. And we saw, at some point, you just go, my gosh, you think of all that packaging that's being produced to individually wrap every single one of those orders and deliver that tooth whitening kit, Jamie Oliver cookbook to its end recipient. It's bubble wrap and it's all of this. So Beck actually said, look, there must be a more sustainable way of doing this. And so we set out to find a more sustainable courier satchel than your standard, fairly heavy-duty, single-use PE satchel that you might get from, you might get a plain white one from Officeworks or Warehouse Stationery, or you'd get a prepaid one from New Zealand Post or the like. And it was a real journey. I won't go into too much detail here, but eventually we found a home compostable material that was waterproof, durable, that labels would stick to, that you could make a tough side seam with, and created courier satchels out of it. And we made them matte black. We put some, funky graphics on them. We were really clear and open in our messaging around them. It was really, really important that they don't get mixed up in the recycling stream. So, there's super clear, kind of fun messaging on the back of them. It says, I'm a real dirtbag, and, talks about how they're safe for worms and so on. All our products are certified to the highest levels, so you can be sure that when you put them in your compost, they're not going to release any toxins and they'll break down properly with no microplastics. So, there is a recycling stream for soft plastics in New Zealand and in Australia. They will take soft plastics and make them into fence posts and the like, which is fantastic. But they're already struggling with the capacity they've got. And we just thought, the appeal of being able to dispose of something yourself in your own backyard that was inherently non-toxic just spoke volumes to us. And they are partly made from plants, so that's the circular aspect to them. And the idea being that when they get composted, they'll, eventually be responsible for helping grow more plants. Is kind of neat.
Yeah, and I mean, I find it incredible. I remember the first time that I saw one of the bags, I'm like, why aren't we just using that? Like, why are we still using, if this is out there, why are we even using any single-use plastics that are made from petroleum? And as well, for me, composting, which is such a big thing. And there's a lot of different things always to talk about compost, because a lot of people don't know enough about the difference of composting, home compostable, biodegradable, and all of these different words. And I think that when I remember the first time that I saw one of the satchels, and like it made it clear that this was home compostable. And actually, me knowing, I was actually looking for certifications and things like that. I'm like, okay, like this actually can be done. And as well, for those that don't compost, there's now so many more options of actually taking it to a commercial compost facility, and even if you don't do it at home.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that, as you're saying, part of the circular economy.
There are. Look, there's, I was at a meeting earlier today, and in the offices, in their kind of the kind of tea, coffee, lunch area, they had bins for, organic compost waste as well as, recycling streams, which is fantastic. Our packaging can go straight into those bins as well. We're also in the process of setting up a network of places where you can take the packaging if you don't have a home compost yourself. And that's all accessible through an app that will literally just show you the places closest to you. Which is important. Product stewardship is really important to us, and just making sure that as many of these bags end up in the right place as possible. But to your point around composting, a big part of our mandate and part of the journey that we've been on is realising the huge impact that food waste has in a negative way on our environment when it's not disposed of properly, and the hugely positive impact it can have when it is disposed of properly. So about 50%, give or take, of all that we send to landfill could actually be composted. Yeah. When it goes to landfill, it creates methane and just fills up our landfills. Whereas if it is composted, all those incredible nutrients get returned back to the soil. So what we're trying to do, as well as provide alternatives to plastic is create a movement around composting, making it, and there's ways to compost now, even if you are in a small apartment or if you're part of a complex, if you all get together and, somewhere in the basement there'll be room for some kind of facility, and there's almost no excuses anymore. And I think if we can help make people more aware of some of those alternative ways of composting, this idea that you don't need a quarter-acre section to be able to do it anymore, is really cool.
Yeah, and what do you think is the reason, or perhaps it's just a matter of timing or not enough information, why aren't all businesses using compostable packaging, if they are using packaging at all?
Okay, it is complex. Plastic does deliver barrier quality, barrier properties that ours doesn't necessarily. So particularly in regards to food packaging, there's still a way to go to make affordable, compostable packaging that doesn't breathe, essentially, and will keep food fresh. And there's always a trade-off, right? You're putting something in plastic to keep it fresh, but you're also reducing food waste at the same time by doing that, because something might last 2, 3, 4 times as long. Yeah. So the technology isn't quite there yet. And in the meantime, there's a very strong plastics lobby, and there's an extraordinary amount of investment by brands in plastic packaging. And it's a tough one. It's a tough one to draw them away from. They'd rather create recycling solutions for plastic than change. And we just, what I always come back to, and Beck and I have these discussions constantly, is plastic actually better? If we could create the recycling, if we could create a circular economy for plastic, is it actually better? And the thing that really gets to me is that plastic is fundamentally designed to last hundreds of years. So when it ends up in the environment, it's stuck there. It's not going anywhere. And it doesn't need to be designed to last for hundreds of years. It just doesn't. And a product should be fit for purpose. And plastic is way overqualified for the job that it's being asked to do, in a sense. Sort of over-engineered. And that over-engineering ends up having negative repercussions when it does end up in the wrong place.
Yeah, and as well, like for those that perhaps don't know enough, like really around 8 to 9% of plastics like that have ever been created haven't actually recycled. So even when we have the capacity to supposedly recycle plastic, it's not done, and a lot of it ends up in the environment. So it is quite a big challenge. I was saying the other time, the only chocolate that I buy is the Trade Aid chocolate that comes in a compostable packaging. And I was thinking, why, if they can do it, why can't every brand do it? Is it there just what you're mentioning, like that some companies have been working on their plastic packaging, or is it the cost?
In that instance, it's a cost thing. Yeah.
I think hopefully in the next couple of years, like between regulations that perhaps tax like plastic petroleum-based like products and more development on this, we can get to a better place in there. Just because I'm aware of time and we need to get through this episode and get into the rest of the day, just a few last questions.
Sure.
And the first one is, what is one resource that you would recommend to other people in terms of these topics?
If you want to get heavily into it, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation website is extraordinary. So Ellen MacArthur is a UK-based individual. She's actually a professional sailor, extraordinary woman, who in her sailing career, per se, saw the impact of plastic in the environment and decided to do something about it. And I don't know how she's done it, but she has created an extraordinary foundation, rallied the world's largest corporations to come in behind, and she's just done it. She and her now, she's got a huge team with her, but they've done the most compelling research around plastics and the plastics economy, and more importantly, circular economy thinking. And the research overwhelmingly suggests that circular economy designs and systems will save economies, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, if we can only get there. But it's fascinating reading, and I'd follow her and her team to the ends of the earth. They're really doing extraordinary things, and we're actually making real change happen. So that the New Plastics Economy Pact, which was signed last year, we were one of the founding signatories. But it has some of the largest corporations in the world committing to reduce the amount of virgin plastic they are using in their packaging, and they're pretty ambitious targets. And the foundation, is holding us all to them on an ongoing annual basis. It's really, really neat. I'm fascinated like a lot of times, and I think that actually a few different people like have mentioned it as their resource to actually go and check out. So I think that it's super credible. It's there's no greenwashing there, and you'll go. There's a lot of really fascinating rabbit holes you can go down.
Yes, definitely. What is, Kate, your one tip that you would share with us?
I think it probably comes back to what I was saying, initially. Be really strong on what your values are and drive every business decision. I mean, if you're in business, if it's a personal thing, I think our values naturally drive personal decisions. But when you come to business per se, for some reason, often they get left at the door. And I would say take them wholeheartedly into business, share them with your team, share them with your customers, shout them from the rooftops, and make every decision, cohesive, and in line with them. And I think what you end up doing will resonate with customers, with people, with investors, with your team, and you'll have a much stronger business that you fundamentally believe in because of it.
Yes, definitely. And especially for nowadays, in terms of consumers, like consumers are looking for what the business stands for and what are the values, and not only just the product itself, but all of that. So it's super important. Yeah. And on a personal note, what has been your latest small act of kindness?
Small act of kindness. Like, other than opening the lift door for someone today, I helped my business partner walk her e-bike up the street. Could have left her to it. No. I don't know.
Well, those are valid ones.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, definitely. And lastly, Kate, what is the one thing that you wish everyone in the world knew?
How important it is to keep food waste out of landfill. It's huge. It's huge for waste. It's huge for global warming.
Wonderful. Yeah, we had in a few episodes ago, we had Michael Garvey from Footprint, and she was sharing a little bit more in detail about this, and it's such a big thing, like the amount of waste that we have. So that's so good. And lastly, how can people follow you, and where can people go to get some of your products?
Okay, well, the best place is follow us on Facebook or Instagram. and that's at Better Packaging Co. And the links through to our website are there. But yeah, just follow what we're up to. Encourage brands that you buy from to think about their packaging more sustainably, to use less of it if they can, all of those things. And just be super conscious in your own consumption going forward. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kate, for sharing with us and taking the time to be here. And I do hope that a business like yours continues growing, because that means that there's more of a better packaging out there.
It does. Look, our business is it's growing faster than we ever dreamed, and it gives me so much hope for the future, because it means that businesses are trying at least to be way more conscious of their footprint. It's extraordinarily gratifying, and people do want to make real change as long as it's affordable and accessible. I truly believe they will.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much again for taking the time, and thank you for everyone who has been listening. I hope that you learned something from it, and I hope that if you have a business, you go and check out their website and get this packaging if you're sending any packages at all. If you're selling on e-commerce, use it. And I hope that you learned something, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thanks, Brian. Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.